his visit to Central Asia and Southeast Asia, proposed to build the 21st century maritime Silk Road and BRI initiative, which is well received by the international community. In order to push forward this effort, China established BRI leading group, and also we set up an office in State Council. And right now, the second Belt and Road Forum is around the corner, approved by the leading group office. We released the report on the Belt and Road Initiative progress, which is the report in my hand. This is the third time the Chinese government released a report on the progress and also important outcome for this forum. And this report objectively summarized the practices around Belt and Road in the last 5 years to enhance the international community's understanding of Belt and Road Initiative and look into the initiative in order to promote the economic and people-to-people exchange along Belt and Road so that we can seek economic growth together, achieve win-win, and build a common community of shared destiny. And this report is about 18,000 characters, has many parts. It's divided into 4 parts, and it's translated into many languages, including Arabic, Chinese, English, French, German, and today we have the Chinese and English version with us. The other 6 versions will be released to the public in the coming 2 years. This report points out we will stick to the principle. In the last 5 years, the progress is quite stunning, and real benefits have been achieved. Participation is on the rise. There's the Chinese saying, the fruit and the flowers, the fruit in autumn and the flowers in spring speak for itself. And it's also stated in many regional and international organizations' report that this initiative has been quite a success. 174 agreements have been signed between China and many other international organizations, between China and Laos, China and Czech Republic. Many bilateral agreements are among them. In terms of connectivity, there are 6 international corridors are in the pipeline in order to improve the connectivity between different countries and to build an effective Euro-Asian market. There's also railways between China and Laos, China and Thailand, and many other countries. Ports projects are also going well. Electricity, oil and gas, electricity, new energy, coal, and also cross-border information channel project is also on its way. In terms of trade connectivity, China proposed a Belt and Road trade connectivity, which is participated by 83 countries and regions. China, ASEAN, Singapore, etc. have upgraded their trade agreements. Since the first Belt and Road Forum, China has signed more than 100 customs cooperation agreements and granted access to 50 kinds of produce. China, together with 27 countries, verified the Belt and Road financing principle, and together with many multilateral organizations, 100 projects covering 70 countries have been done. IMF and China Energy Center was built. More than 11 Chinese banks have set their offices along the Belt and Road countries. Now, China has RMB services in dozens of countries. China has also set up many scholarship programs, signed diploma recognition program with 24 countries. China and 57 countries along the Belt and Road signed agreement to grant visa-free services and also visa facilitation agreements. And hundreds of traditional Chinese medicine centers and foundations have been set up. In terms of industrial cooperation, China directly invested more than 90 billion USDs. China signed capacity agreements with hundreds of countries and also signed third country market agreements with Italy and many other countries. The report stresses that the idea comes from China, but it belongs to the world. It's deeply rooted in history, but also looks into the future. It faces Eurasia and more countries beyond. Right now, the world is undergoing great changes. However, peace and cooperation is still the main theme. China is willing to work with many parties to promote Belt and Road Initiative to go deeper and to build this initiative into a road for prosperity, openness, green innovation, civilization, and connectivity. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Xiao Weiming. Next, we'll give the floor to Sun Lihong. Good afternoon, everyone. Our office today issued the progress of Belt and Road Initiative. I'd like to take the opportunity to talk about the economic and trade corporations centered around BRI, because it's the most essential part of BRI. Our ministry strictly follows to the guidance of President Xi and commits to the instructions of the Central Party Committee and sticks to the sharing and cooperation principles. And results has been achieved. All these results can be found in 5 aspects. First, trade is enlarging. We actively promote opening market with each other, facilitate trade openness, at the same time optimize trade structure and find new opportunities for trade to grow. We make BRI a platform to promote trade to neighboring countries. We want to innovate new models, especially in e-commerce. From 2003 to 2008, China, together with countries along the BRI, has invested more than 6 trillion USD, a 4% year-on-year growth, higher than the average trade growth in China, accounting for 27.4% of the trade in goods. And we continue to strengthen trade guarantees and encourage Chinese companies to go to Belt and Road countries. On one hand, we want to promote economic growth domestically, but also help people in those countries. And we continue to improve the business environment and set up 12 free trade zones and explore free trade ports to attract other countries' investment. We have enjoyed 5.2% of growth in investment, with over 400 billion revenues in those countries. Thirdly, implementation of key projects. Together with relevant parties, we have promoted infrastructure investment projects. Especially key projects are now being implemented. For example, the Yaji Railway, the China-Malaysia Friendship Bridge, the port in Pakistan now is in full capacity. It will take me more than 1 hour to go through every project. Those projects are very instrumental to the local economy and are well received by local people. We also actively promote the economic cooperation zone in those countries, which are getting better. They serve several purposes. On one hand, they provide a platform for Chinese business to go there. And secondly, they give those countries an opportunity to learn from Chinese experience in reform and opening up, to take reference of Chinese practices. And what's more, it creates an effective vehicle for economic cooperation between China and those countries. For accelerated growth of free trade zone with ASEAN, Pakistan, and many other countries and regions, we have signed or upgraded our free trade agreements. Those agreements for the trade facilitation provides a great mechanism. Now, a free trade zone network has been formed between China and those countries. For example, the Eurasia Economic Forum. We signed RCEP. Right now, the negotiation on RCEP has yielded great results. Fifth, a more comprehensive cooperation mechanism. MOFCOM have set up a committee with almost all neighboring countries along the Belt and Road. Through those platforms, we have negotiated about Belt and Road. And in order to make our negotiation and coordination more effective, we and those countries have built investment cooperation working group, and we have an e-commerce bilateral agreement with 17 countries and have built an investment agreement with 14 countries, and we have signed a third-party market agreement with Italy, Spain, and many other more, as you probably have read on the news. Since its birth 6 years ago, Belt and Road Initiative has promoted economic development greatly. Right now, the economic ties have been closer between China and those countries. China, through opening itself also integrates itself into regional and global value chain, which contributes to the world open market. Let's start the QA. Please state your name and organization before you ask the question. Hi, I'm from People's Daily, and the second Belt and Road Forum will start in 2 days. During the first Belt and Road Forum, China has reached many consensus, and there were more than 200 outcomes achieved with those attending countries. So it's been 2 years, so I would like to know the progress of those projects and outcomes. Thank you for your question, and thank you for following the outcomes of the first Belt and Road Forum closely. The 219 outcomes in the first Belt and Road Forum is definitely eye-catching, and I'm happy to tell you, through concerted efforts, the first Belt and Road Forum achieved 5 types of outcomes, and all of them are finished as planned. And some of them now becoming a permanent part of our day-to-day work, and we will continue to proceed with them. I believe that's a satisfactory answer to all the attendees. I think there are several features of all those 219 outcomes. First, a more effective policy negotiation. Now, the cooperation between China and other countries has been improved. There's more political trust. The Belt and Road Forum Advisory Committee and Liaison Office was established. NDRC and Belt and Road Construction Center are now up and running. The Belt and Road official website is available to the public. And secondly, focus on key projects. In the past 2 years, we have conducted many transportation, water, energy, marine observation infrastructure building, Xiongsan Railway, and many other key projects have found financing. China, together with Russia, Germany, Belarus, Mongolia, Poland, signed the 8 projects agreement. Thirdly, deepened industrial cooperation, a further facilitation of world trade. China signed industrial cooperation agreement with 41 countries and built many financing platforms with Latin American countries and African countries. Quarantine, customs, cooperations are ongoing. More than 6 ports have signed an expressway convention. Together with Serbia, Chile, and Egypt, we have started practical cooperation on agriculture. And capital flow has become more diverse. We will together build a sustainable, low-risk financing system Now we have more than 100 members to the Eurasian Financing Organization. Right now, there's enough budget to support all those infrastructure, energy, and financing projects. The Silk Road Funds has raised additional 100 billion USD. And people-to-people exchange has been ever closer. And there's some other cultural, media exchanges. And we invited many researchers from the Belt and Road countries. Many cultural exchange platforms have been built. For example, Music Education Alliance. Thank you. I'm from Economic Daily. And Mr. Song from MOFCOM talked about the outcomes of the Belt and Road Initiative. I'd like to know in the future, what other measures will you take to promote economic and trade relations? Thank you for your question. Last August, during the celebration of the 5th anniversary of Belt and Road Initiative, President Xi, on the conference, stressed that we need to shift gear to a more high-quality development, to narrow down the cooperation framework, to do more refined work. And we will deepen our cooperation, improve our cooperation quality, and to create more outcomes. And this year, we will take 5 measures. First, to build a high-quality cooperation platform. As you know, last year, we successfully held the first Export and Import Expo. The Central Party Committee decides that this is a great measure, a great step marks China's further opening up to the world. And it has attracted global attention and it was commended by the international community. And this year, we will implement all the agreements signed. And as President Xi said, we have to make the expos better than the first one. And right now, we are preparing for the second Import and Export Expo to build a good platform and to pave the way for the BRI. And secondly, to focus on a small number of key projects. We need to select some key model projects, help small and medium countries to consolidate their economic foundation and so that they can create more values in the value chain and to give the help they really need and to provide some foreign aids to improve the local people's welfare. Third, in order to build BRI better, we as a government needs to play a bigger role. However, the market needs to play the definitive role in the market, in the allocation. We need to invite entrepreneurs to explore more opportunities and to know each other. So we will organize more large-size expos, especially facing Belt and Road countries, and to attract more investment and business. And we'll encourage different regions to build more investment platforms. We hope that more investments opportunities can be found through allowing entrepreneurs to meet each other. Fourth, Internet. Internet and 5G, the soon-to-come 5G, will create more favorable terms for e-commerce compared to the beginning of reform and opening up. China's investment or trade relations with other countries have been changed. In the past, we have to go pitch to others, but now, through mobile phones, through laptops, you can buy anything on the tip of your finger and have them sent to your door away. So we have to make use of modern technology so that e-commerce can empower China and neighboring countries' investment and development. So this will be a new fuel. Fifth, promoting free trade zones. We will negotiate free trade zones with more countries and improve and upgrade the existing free trade zones so that they can go up to another level. So we need to reduce barriers and cut down red tapes to build a Belt and Road market. Good afternoon. I want to ask a number. So the BRI projects, investment, loans altogether, what's the size of it? Investment and loans? Thank you for your question. In 2013, since the proposal of BRI, it's been 5 years. The investment in BRI countries together is around 90 billion loans. So that's different types of loans, from policy banks, from commercial banks, and also from private institutions. So far, we don't have an accurate number, but according to our estimation, it's around 200 to 300 billion USD. And a large part of it is through investment. So in general, they're still in control. I'm from CCTV. In the past 5 years, people's opinion on Belt and Road Initiative differ. So what's your view on the significance and meaning of BRI to the world? Thank you for your question. Through studying President Xi's key speeches and instructions carefully and studying the decisions and documents issued by the State Council, I think I can summarize my answer in 3 sentences. First, for China itself, it helps us to reform and opens up. And secondly, to the world, it's a public platform for us to achieve common prosperity. Third is a platform for us to build a shared community of common destiny. So it's in sync with our 4 strategies and the layout of our reform and open up policy. It's fair to say BRI is a flag for our reform and opening up in the new era. As you all know, against the backdrop of BRI, we further open our service sector. So the management factor is basically totally open and lower the access of produce, and also deepens financing, tax, and finance sectors. Right now, the business environment has been largely improved. According to World Bank's 2019 business environment report, right now China ranks top 50 in terms of business environment. On one hand, we open our coastal regions. We also open up the hinterland, the mainland. So we're actually from the east to the west, we both promote going up and bringing in. We also opens up the third market with other countries. And I need to emphasize that in the central and western section of China, as the initiative deepens, those regions are now leading the country in reform and opening up. We have seen newfound vigor and vitality in those regions. It also has great contributions to the world economy and the world landscape in 2 folds. On one hand, BRI strongly upholds multilateralism and promotes trade and investment. It plays an important role and fuels the economic recovery of the world. For many years, our economy contributes more than 30% to the world economy. So that's more than the totality of Japan, Europe, and the US add together. So our annual contribution to the world also ranks the first. So thanks to BRI, we are the largest. We allow the largest landlocked country to actually have a channel to the sea and help other countries achieve their dreams. Pakistan now has many energy projects. They no longer suffer from electricity shortage. And Tajikistan no longer limits winter season electricity use, and for the first time has a net export of energy. And Laos now has a channel to the sea. So those are facts. BRI contribute greatly to countries along Belt and Road. And secondly, this contributes to a more comprehensive global governance system. The 3 principles about BRI and 5 connectivity principles actually oppose multilateralism. That's why we stick to the 3 principles. We believe in win-win, communication, connectivity, enhanced political trust, people-to-people exchange, common community of shared destiny. Those ideas are well received by the world. UN, G20, IPAC, Shanghai Corporation, all endorse BRI. Like I said, we're in the same boat. And this provides a China solution to the global governance.
Hi, I'm from Reuters News. So China's been talking about building a more sustainable, more green Belt and Road project. It's also refuted criticism that some Belt and Road projects perhaps trap developing countries in debt. I'm wondering, is there any specific detail you can give on how China is steering Belt and Road that way? And can we expect more laws or regulation for private and public investment in Belt and Road to sort of fix the problem?
中方指出，要将“一带一路”变成可持续发展，并且是绿色的道路，中方还反驳了所谓的债务陷阱论。请问在这个方面，您有什么更多的细节或者是具体的举措可以和我们分享吗？另外，中方是否有意在公司投资方面出台法律或者是相关的法规，来进一步规范“一带一路”框架下的投资？
谢谢你的关注。刚才我在前面提到，丝绸之路经济带和海上丝绸之路，也就是“一带一路”倡议。
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the BRI initiative focuses on building a green Silk Road. In recent years, many Chinese companies going global also endorse the idea of environmental friendly development and green development. So be it industrial investment or infrastructure investments are all following this principle, especially those hydroelectricity, power plants and ports, airports, highways, all need to meet certain environmental protection standards. We also invite third-party evaluations, and due diligence has been done. Feasibility studies was done as well. So those projects are definitely green and environmentally aware. Going forward, we will continue to work with different parties to deepen our efforts to counter climate change and to restore fragile ecosystems and especially protect biodiversity. The loan trap and the problems you mentioned are all outdated. I can tell you that since the beginning of this initiative, no countries become deeply in debt because of BRI or has fallen into the trap. On the contrary, countries who participate in Belt and Road Initiative all enjoyed rapid growth. Southeastern countries and South Asian countries are enjoying, on average, more than 5% of annual economic growth. So the so-called debt trap doesn't exist. I would like to add something. The term debt trap was a buzzword some time ago. If a country, a family, or a business to develop, it needs to build some foundations, accumulate some experience, and when they are confident enough and they're ready, they need to accelerate their development. They need to use leverage. That means they need to develop through borrowing. But the premise of that is that they're able to get financing and get loans. You should develop through borrowing, but it should not be done at the price of losing your credit. So, for those more financially distressed countries, they should not be deprived of opportunities to get loans or developing itself. Be the lender or borrower or business involved need to meet certain requirements. The borrowing countries need to constrain its finance and treasury, need to focus more on infrastructure, industrial investment, develop its industries. For lending countries, including China, other emerging countries, and more developed countries, have the obligation to help those falling behind countries improve their financing environment. For business involved, like Mr. Xiao mentioned, need to do feasibility study and manage their risks. What is FDI return or ODI return? So you have to control your risks. You have to know what is the premium risks. Through concerted efforts, we can definitely follow the BRI principles and solve these issues. Maybe some countries are right now at the height of their debt level, so as the economy develops, their industries develop, their debt level will be lowered. Without development, without working hard, there's no hope. Thank you. Thank you. I'm from the Phoenix. Could you talk about the overseas trade and economic zones and their future prospects? In the beginning, I mentioned those overseas economic and trade zones serve as important platforms for China and BRI countries to conduct industrial development. Since the proposal of BRI, the platforms mushroom, they are not a completely new concept. They existed even before the proposal of BRI. The building of those domes and the size of those domes are on the rise, has become a highlight of BRI. I don't need to give you more examples. You have found them in many countries. You probably have visited them yourself, maybe more than I did. According to MOFCOM, China has invested in those domes, not just from China, but other countries as well. The investment in those domes has approached almost 40 billion USD. That contributed 3 billion taxes and 300,000 jobs. And the domes built between China and those countries account for more than 70% of the total. So as we go forward, we will work on the mechanisms, the cooperation mode, and we're determined to continue to work together and to build those zones with the best of our capability, so that those zones can play an instrumental role in the industrial cooperation between China and those countries. And they should be the pilot zones for those countries to deepen their industrial developments. When you find a very advanced management level, select one of the best cooperation zones, so they can become important platforms that can lead to win-win results. In the soon-to-come Second Belt and Road Forum, there are 12 sub-forums. One of them is about overseas trade and economic cooperation zones, and this sub-forum will be held by MOFCOM. We're almost done with preparation. It's almost ready. On the forum, we have invited countries' representatives, business, and institutions to discuss how to achieve high growth. Thank you. Next question. Hi, Mr. Xiao mentioned in the future this road will be a road of open innovation to cleanness. So I want to ask, for each this word, do you have a specific plan? Well, I'll briefly introduce the routes of all 7 roads. In May 2017, on the first Belt and Road Forum, President Xi proposed to build BRI into a road of peace, prosperity, openness, innovation, civilization. So 5 roads. And he stresses that we need to improve international cooperation on anti-corruption, so that is 5+1, a clean road. During last year's China-African summit, President Xi further adds that we need to build the BRI into a green road, so together 7 roads. Around those 7 roads, we have some preliminary plan. On prosperity and peace, we want to work with neighboring countries to build together and share together, and to form consensus, and to build a conflict resolution mechanism and a security alert mechanism, and to counter separatism, terrorism, and to build a new type of international relationship, to solve issues through dialogue, not conflicts, to form alliance. And on the road of prosperity, we want to build connectivities through all 4 channels: the sea, the air, the internet, and the land. And to deepen industrial cooperation, to find new energy and new landscape, to find a controllable finance system, and to share all the outcomes. On building an open road, we, together with other countries, want to uphold and maintain a rule-based, open, transparent, inclusive, and non-discriminatory mechanism to facilitate trade openness, to build high-quality free trade zones, to respect international rules and standards, and promote world economic development. On building a green Silk Road, we are willing to work with other countries to deliver the green development and to address common challenges and explore green finance, to build a green, low-carbon, sustainable lifestyle, to achieve the 2030 United Nations sustainability goals together. On a road of innovation, we want to build R&D research platforms and to form a diverse and multi-level research mechanism and to work on AI, quantum computing, and other cutting-edge areas, and to strengthen IP protection. And building a road of civilization, we want to deepen cooperations with other countries on health, sports, media, tourism, etc., to promote exchange between think tanks, parties, youth. We'll continue to support developing countries along the Belt and Road and foreign aids they need. And on building a clean road, we want to improve the oversight and risk management to build a clean, efficient business environment and to work on anti-corruption with other countries and to continue to clamp down business bribery with other countries. Last night, there are some terrible attacks in Sri Lanka. Will this forum discuss this issue? And also on the peaceful development and security issues, what kind of discussion will be held during the forum? Thank you for your question. About the security issue you asked about, China, under the BRI framework, the Foreign Office, the Foreign Ministry, has established a security office. Relevant ministries have strengthened cooperation with our foreign counterparts along the BRI. We have built a dialogue and cooperation mechanism. All in all, in the last few years, the outcomes have been quite in-depth and wide, especially with Central Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries. Mechanisms and dialogues on securities have been built. The main goal is through the cooperations between security departments and ministries to together counter violent crimes and terrorism in order to provide a safe environment for BRI projects to be carried out. We hope countries along Belt and Road and their governmental agencies can continue to deepen their cooperation and in the future international relationship, to seek further information exchange and enforcement exchange. Xinhua news agencies. As mentioned before, during the Second Belt and Road Forum, there 2 sub-forums will be held by MOFCON. Could you talk about the 2 sub-forums details? About Belt and Road International Forum, the foreign ministries has already made some announcements. And since you asked about the 2 sub-forums that we are in charge of, then I'll answer you briefly. The sub-forum will be held in the afternoon of April 25th. And MOFCOM is the organizer. The China Construction Banks and other co-sponsors. The theme is opening, inclusiveness, etc. The attendees will discuss around openness, trade promotion, innovation, optimizing business environment, and sustainable development. Right now, those sub-forums have been very popular. 300 people have signed up for sub-forum. 200 of them are foreign representatives. Many are minister-level attendees. And for the overseas trade and economic zone sub-forum, will be held in the morning of April 25th. The Minister of Rural Development is the co-sponsor. We'll talk about international trade cooperations. Attendees will talk about building overseas trade and economic cooperation zone and how to conduct high-quality development. And there are about 200 attendees, and more than half are from overseas. Besides keynotes by the speakers, there will also be panel discussions and interactions. So I hope that different parties can make use of the 2 sub-forums to reach more trade and economic consensus and to promote high-quality development. Next question. Thank you. From Beijing News Daily. I noticed that China, together with 150 countries, international organizations, have signed cooperation agreements. And I'd like to know, for the next step, while implementing those agreements, what about the policy connection and also standards unifications? What are your considerations? As BRI advances, in the past 5 years, there is some hardware connectivity, for example, infrastructure. In the future, we will also seek software connectivity, including rules and standards, or those 2 will go hand in hand. And from my personal perspective, I think the software connectivity, in some sense, is even more long-lasting and more important than the hardware connectivity. Because all those material connectivity will eventually actually connected on the software level, rules and standards. And we do feel the burden on our shoulder. And we already started works on connecting the software level, which is included in the 2019 Leading Office Working Group plan. And I'd like to make a few points. First, policy connection. The more the better. Will be always in progress. BRI is an opening initiative. Any country, as long as is willing to build the BRI with China, is welcomed here. Any country on earth. You mentioned that 150 countries and international organizations have signed agreements with us. The rest of the countries are also welcomed. Secondly, standards and rules, connections, their way to go. When we talk about rules and standards, in general, it sounds easy. But when you sit down to talk about details and specifics, it can be quite complicated. Rules and standards are massive. From the beginning of last century, or the end of 19th centuries, work on unifying international rules and standards already started. I think roughly there's international public laws, economic laws, and private laws. And for the international economic rules, the standards for investment and trade is essential. Even in this aspect, it can be further divided into investment, transportation, finance, insurance, IPR protection, labor. And in each of them, there are several international conventions. So you have to sit down and go through all of them one by one. It's not discussions in theory or on paper. Many countries have already signed those conventions, but there are other countries who are not the signing parties. So for those countries, those rules don't apply. So this process can be very time-consuming and difficult. Thirdly, the Chinese government has always upheld a rule-based multilateral trade system and has always complied with the UN Charter and other international rules. China is also bounded by the international conventions China has signed on. And China has always contributed and did our part to those international conventions and rules. So I believe with the outcomes of Second Belt and Road Forum, the work on international rules and standards will become more prominent than ever. Thank you. From China Daily. So the railways between China and those Belt and Road countries have becoming increasingly influential over the years. So we would like to know the plans. Thank you. So after BRI was proposed, the railway systems was on the rise. To give you a few numbers, from the first train to now, we have opened about 14,000 trains connecting China, 62 cities to 51 cities in 15 European countries, and covering 68 routes. Now, from any city in China, you can, through 3 exits, the Alamont, the Mangzhouli, and Alahaote, to go out from China via Belarus, Russia, Central Asia, to any countries in Europe. That's how goods continuously flow between China and those countries through the trains. There are several features. The qualities has been improved by a large extent. Now, we have 9 trains coming back per day. So the two-way transportations is balanced. And the safety level is also improved. And the diversity of goods is increasing. From phones, laptops, IT products to apparels, footwear, automobiles, parts, food, wine, coffee beans, logs, etc. Especially the export of automobile is quite eye-catching. And right now, the oil transportation is becoming quite a norm. So as those trains become available, the opening up of the central China and those other countries are well connected. These have created great opportunities for the local economic growth and job creations. Last year, the value of the total goods transported through those trains reached 33 billion USD. Like I mentioned before, China, Belarus, Russia signed agreements to upgrade the trains and established working group. Latvia and Croatia become the observers of those agreements. A joint working group oversees the information exchange. And within China, we also established a coordination committee as an industrial association established by business. So I believe the trains along Belt and Road will continue to improve the relations, cooperation, and maintain the brands and solve the traffic jams and serve people along the Belt and Road. The last question. On the first Finance Daily, now facing complicated the ever-intense geopolitical environment and internal economic struggle. So how can Belt and Road continue to proceed? This question sounds too broad. I'll briefly talk about my thoughts. China-US trade conflicts is well known. And Belt and Road Forum is around the corner. China's attitude is always to stick to inclusiveness, opening up, win-win. We welcome all countries, included the US, to participate in BRI and Belt and Road Forum. China as the largest emerging countries and the US as the largest developed countries have great room for cooperation. And there's great complementarity between our two countries. The American had a GDP last year over 25 trillion. China's GDP was 13.5 trillion. Although in lump sum we are 66% of US GDP, but the per capita GDP is only 15% of that of US. So still a huge gap between China and the US. There's a lot we can learn from the US through trade and investment. The US leads the world in high-tech and produce exports, and therefore needs a large market like US. So we have enough reasons to believe our similarities outnumbers our differences. There's more to gain by working together than being apart. And it's normal to have conflicts. So the 3 principles and the 5 connectivity of BRI, as time goes by, will be accepted by more countries, including the US. So our cooperation with the EU started very early. Many members of EU are now important partners of BRI. Especially the Eurasia Connectivity Initiative proposed by the EU is consistent with BRI. So we welcome EU members to deepen their connections with China and to improve the EU-China relations. Just want to add a few things. As you said, China is facing a very complicated geopolitical environment, and what's our consideration? And I want to ask you, since World War II until now, can you tell me, is there any time when the geopolitical environment wasn't complicated, but since World War II, do you know how much economic growth we have achieved? So I don't think those issues matter. As long as we have an open up attitude, as long as we're not closing up our borders, this trend is unstoppable. Leaders of all countries have the wisdom and capability to overcome difficulties. And our people are even more capable. So do our entrepreneurs. In facing complexity, risks can still work together. And your second question, can you repeat it? Right, China's economic structure adjustment. You're quite right. During the 18th NPC session, we made adjustment that right now where China is switching gear from a high-speed growth to a mid-speed, and our focus is switched from the low end to mid to high end, and we have becoming a more innovation-driven economy. We have to adjust in order to achieve a more steady growth. In which case, we certainly need to deepen reforms and further opening up. That's why President Xi reiterated China's door will only be more open. Only opening up, allowing more factors to flow in freely. Can the market be more integrated? Resources to be more efficiently allocated between different countries? Can the regional and the world economy become better as a whole? When we make the pie bigger, we will distribute the proceeds more evenly. So this is a good news for Chinese economy and the world economy. Thank you. This is the end of today's press conference. Thank you.